Hi, I'm Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com and the creator of the Investigator's Ultimate Guide series, premium private investigator training from someone who's been there and done that. There are two different perspectives that intelligence agencies, and I'm talking about at the national level now, there are two different philosophies on how to use the information that's collected. I will not go into the history of these because it doesn't necessarily apply as much as it used to. But one style used to be where the information would be gathered and then acted upon immediately. And this was, I think it's becoming a more and more old school idea. But the idea is if you learn of somebody who's buying the components for an explosive, then you would quickly go in and find a reason to arrest this person and start the interrogation process, talking to them, trying to look at their history, figuring out what's going on. And the idea is that you just nip it in the bud, that if this guy doesn't even get the chance to purchase the components that he needs, that he cannot hurt anybody, and that you've eliminated one of these threats. The other philosophy on gathering information, the same situation, you know this person is attempting to buy components for an explosive, but the idea is to put them under heavy surveillance to watch and see where it leads you. So now not only do you want to see who does he make phone calls to, who does he visit, where does he go, does he have a storage unit, those types of things. And the idea being that you come in at the last possible safe moment and then make the arrest and stop the event, but you've gathered all this other intelligence in the process. I think it's probably more towards the latter version now, the idea of letting it go as long as you safely can, but it's a real fine line, isn't it? Who knows at any moment when this guy may be ready to act. So why does this affect you? How does this affect you as a private investigator? When you gather information, you're going to have choices whether to use it now or to sit on it and save it. So in a very vanilla sense, let me tell you about, like, if you're working on a repossession of a vehicle. So through your investigation, you discover the phone number for the person who has the car. If you call that person and try to talk to them about recovering the vehicle, you might get the vehicle back pretty quickly. They might give it up to you or whatever. But if you do and they don't want to give it up to you, what's happened there? You've alerted them, number one, that you have their phone number, and by the time you get around to visiting them, that car is going to be well hidden. They know you're looking for them. Now, in a repo case for a private investigator, it's probably not that cut and dried, right? By time I would get any cases like that, the person knows. I mean, the repo company has worked hard to get the car, and the person is very aware that the car is being hunted for. But again, if I discover this new phone number for the person, I'm not going to outright call him and try to negotiate getting the car back, because we know that doesn't work. But if I use that phone number, and the person becomes suspicious on, say, a pretext that I try to use, then I've blown the advantage I have of using that phone number. So here's the fine line you have to straddle on this thing. You know, it's great that you've got the guy's phone number, but that doesn't get you any closer to solving a case. If you use the phone number, there's a chance that you tip to the person that you have this piece of information. That's the border. That's the conundrum that you're going to run into with a lot of things, whether it's picking up an address on somebody or whatever it might be. So the point is, you're going to have to make a judgment on a case-by-case basis when you gather a new piece of information. Do I act upon that right now, or do I try to sit on it and build it out to something bigger? Sometimes when this is a much easier decision to make is when you have interviews to do with people. You very rarely are going to be going out and doing the interviews right away without gathering other information first. So if you're doing investigating a crime and you have a list of 4 witnesses, you're probably going to do a little background check on these people, find out a little bit about them before you go out and talk to them. If one of the witnesses to the crime is an 84-year-old veteran who flies the flag and who has lived in that neighborhood since it was a quote-unquote good neighborhood and has watched it deteriorate downhill, you're going to approach him differently. He's got different motivations and different things he cares about, rather than, say, if one of the witnesses is the buddy to the guy who pulled the trigger. Rather, you're going to approach that guy differently than maybe somebody who's just, if you see that they're just 3 months out of prison, you're going to handle those different interviews differently. And I don't just mean from a safety point of view, but what motivates them. Why are they going to talk to you? How do you dress? So you're going to get the information before you do the interviews. There's a very tactical example. But when you first do the interview, if you're interviewing the guy that's just 3 months out of prison, you're not necessarily going to want to drop the information that you know that about him, right? You're going to do this interview, and if it goes well, great, you've got what you need. If it doesn't, you may want to come back and take another shot at interviewing this guy, and if he doesn't know that you know about his past, that gives you a leg up, and maybe that's something you can trot out to your advantage later on. So there's an example of where you have a piece of information. Even though you're still moving forward, you don't use that information until you need to, until the time is right. Very tricky sometimes to make these calls, especially when you balance the whole thing in the fact that you're running a business and you have to solve these cases, you have to put together whatever you're working on to get paid. So there is a time element involved also. Very tricky. If you have any particular advice on how you handle these things in particular, or something you want to share, please hit up the comments below. Had some great comments lately, people being able to share some really valuable things to help each other out. In the meantime, this is Larry Kaye with ShadowAnyone.com. Remember, do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing.